Webby, there's one Navy aircraft carrier battle group in the Mediterranean tonight and one on the way. That will put more than a dozen American ships in place offshore Israel and Lebanon, at least 125 U.S. warplanes, dozens of helicopters, and about 10,000 sailors and Marines. There are no orders to deploy those U.S. assets into the Israeli-Hamas war, even as today saw one of the worst incidents of the war. The U.S. will be available on short notice if necessary to aid Israel, one of its closest allies. Once the two carrier groups, including accompanying battleships, are in place, another 2,000 American troops in the U.S. and overseas will be put on standby for Middle East deployment if needed. This group includes intelligence officers, support staff, and medical units. Tonight, former senior U.S. counterterrorism official and University of Michigan professor Javad Ali says it is a significant show of force.
The firepower alone on the aircraft carrier is significant because the aircraft carriers have between 75 on one carrier. I think the Ford has 75 and the Nimitz has 60. And then around them, there are destroyers, there are cruisers. Those ships are more to protect the carrier than launch offensive operations against Hezbollah or add to the Israeli ground campaign in Gaza Strip, if that indeed occurs.
Coming as President Biden has already taken off and is in the air headed to Israel.
Already, Palestinian civilians have been caught in the crossfire. The infrastructure of Gaza, we've all seen the pictures, has really been hit hard and damaged. And if a ground campaign starts, that is only going to get worse, unfortunately.
So West Asia is like a tinderbox right now. Multiple stakeholders, heavily armed and not shy of using force. It is a volatile cocktail of violence and politics. What could make it worse? Try Chinese warships, because they're already there, 6 of them. The PLA, the Chinese army, has sent 6 warships to West Asia. It's not clear when they arrived, but last week they made their presence known. A Chinese naval task force was spotted in the Gulf. It had 3 warships, 1 destroyer, 1 frigate, and 1 supply ship. Together, they were a task force. And this task force made 2 stops, Oman and Kuwait. Now these ships had some serious firepower. The destroyer is what China calls the ZEBO. It can launch guided missiles. It also has advanced radar and electronic equipment. Their last stop was Muscat, the capital of Oman. We cannot confirm where they are or where they went after that. So that's one team with 3 ships. Now let's tell you about the second one. The second group, again 3 warships. They were spotted earlier this month. They escorted a cargo ship from Panama. Their current status is not clear, but by all accounts, all these ships have not left the region. In other words, as the war between Israel and Hamas escalates, China has 6 warships in West Asia. What are they doing there? Fueling a lot of speculation, among other things. Experts are describing and discussing a range of possibilities as to why they're there, like the evacuation of Chinese citizens. That's being held out as one possibility, but it makes little sense because Beijing is not evacuating its citizens. Yes, it has asked Chinese nationals to leave Israel, but it's not arranging any chartered flights for them. China has told its citizens to, quote-unquote, find their own way home. Also, you don't need 6 warships to bring your people to safety.
The U.S. is deploying thousands of Marines and additional forces to the Middle East, according to an announcement from the Pentagon yesterday. The move is in response to recent Iranian attempts to seize commercial shipping vessels. Earlier this month, the U.S. stopped Iran from seizing 2 tankers in the Gulf of Oman, including one instance in which an Iranian vessel opened fire on a tanker. The Pentagon didn't specify which forces would be deployed, but they say the deployment will likely consist of 3 ships and around 2,400 Marines.
Good evening. 2 U.S. officials tell ABC News that the 18th Airborne and the 82nd Airborne here at Fort Liberty have not received orders to fly out anywhere at this time. No orders have been assigned, but according to the Department of Defense, about 2,000 personnel and a range of units are on alert. They are on alert to prepare for a deployment to the Middle East. Now, according to those two U.S. officials who confirmed to ABC News that, the prepare to deploy orders are for identified units, these orders are to be ready with 24 hours notice, not 96 like they usually are. This is all to help the DoD quickly react to developments in the Middle East if needed. And the DoD says Secretary Austin is continuing to assess the situation. Ultimately, the Department of Defense says they want to make it known that they are willing and able to support Israel with backup units in the region and is defending Israel's moves against Hamas.
We have to remember that this attack is considered their 9/11. They have every right and should respond to the terrorists that killed innocent people.
And the 18th Airborne spokesperson here at Fort Liberty does say that troops here are ready for deployment if they are needed. Live at Fort Liberty, Monique John, ABC 11 Eyewitness News.
That is, and I'm reading here, the key reason for the IDF, Israeli Defense Force, ground invasion delay is due to the U.S. request to complete preparations for, quote, broader conflict. This is not some sort of random goofball or doofus making this declaration. This is an official U.S. source. So to complete preparation for broader conflict. And many things are actually indicating this that I'd like to get to here very quickly. Preparations include deployment of THAAD. This is also too confirmed, which is a terminal high-altitude area defense. Deployment of THAAD, Patriot air defense systems, also too. Preparations of a strike group in the Gulf. This exact same thing happened during the lead up to the war in Iraq and several other instances. So a lot of you people that are actually wondering why there's a delay, my fears are confirmed, and there has been, once again, a 48-hour to 96-hour warning that's been privately issued to this former recon Marine that I give a great deal of credit to. Street cred, take your pick, whatever you feel like. So there is a strategic placement of forces that are going on. Right now we actually have, not far off of Israel, the USS Gerald Ford and the USNS Laramie. But what has happened is a redirection of the Dwight D. Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group that is currently in the middle of the Atlantic somewhere as it's steaming its way to the Mideast. It was meant to join the USS Gerald Ford as deterrence, but what instead it's going to do is it's going to pass, I see down here, the strike group's going to pass through the Mediterranean Sea and then through, not stay in the Mediterranean, through the Suez Canal instead of sailing around South Africa. So the 3-ship battalion is going to be poised in the Persian Gulf, comprising the Bataan Amphibious Ready Group, which will be the largest mass of U.S. naval forces in, quote, this is from an admiral, the largest mass of U.S. naval forces in the Mediterranean for decades. Bibi Netanyahu has said repeatedly, as I think several U.S. officials, of cutting off the head of the snake. Now, I think a lot of unintelligent people have read that or just completely glossed over it. We're going to cut off the head of the snake. They think that's a higher-up leadership, either in Lebanon or Gaza, but the head of the snake, they will tell you over and over and over and over again, and they have for decades, really, is in Iran, which all sources, whether we agree on this or not, is not important. They keep declaring, and they have now even up to about 8+ years ago, currently at 85% uranium enrichment. Just yesterday on travel.state.gov, a worldwide caution was issued due to increased tensions, yada yada. So that occurred today, a worldwide orange level caution. The crew on board the USS Gerald Ford, which is CVN 78 in the Eastern Mediterranean, has been served, just wait a second, this is going to sound superficial, but it's important, served lobster tail and steak for dinner tonight, which is always reserved for either holidays, this is not a holiday, or news upon which It is expected the crew's morale is going to sink due to deployment extension or something more intense. And many people that have served on these carrier crews confirm that that is the truth. They never serve lobster tail and steak unless something big is about to happen. That's some sort of naval thing that before action or on a holiday, lobster tail and steak is served, and people are stuffed with the the luxury food items. And that sounds superficial, but a lot of things are actually adding up. So the Dwight D. Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group is comprised of a lot of high-end military assets that are being strategically placed, and which makes 100% sense that the U.S. is telling Israel, cool your jets just for a few days here, because we're strategically placing these assets. So the Dwight D. Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group, the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer USS Gravely, the USS Mason, and the Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser, the USS Philippine Sea. Also, too, Austin, U.S. official, head of the military, has ordered the deployment of Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, THAAD, as I mentioned, and many more Patriot battalion batteries to the Mideast.
Shalom, Kahala Yahawah B'Shem Yashai, B'Shem Qadash. Double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, with the house of David reborn again in this generation. And shalom to the 130 Yasharallah, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about the buildup of the armies of the world there in West Asia, otherwise known as the Levant, the Middle East, and soon to be referred to as the Valley of Armageddon. But let's go and read this first. This is Revelations 11 and 14. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. So, just as John the Baptist was being shown visions of World War I and World War II, he started to see what we're living through right now, which is the buildup of the armies which are going to participate in the Third World War, which is going to take place primarily in the Levant area, right outside of Israel. Right? The Bible talks about how the Lord is going to cause events to take place that are going to draw all the armies of the world to that location. And this is what we're seeing. Now, I didn't include it in this lesson, but there's tons of images and videos showing mass military deployments of equipment on trains from what I've seen recently in Tennessee. I think there was a movement by Washington. China was moving a lot of its far-range missiles. So a lot of movement is going on. This is Joel 2 and 20. But I will remove far off from you the northern army, and will drive him into the land barren and desolate, with his face towards the east sea, and his hinder part towards the utmost sea. And his stink shall come up, for his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things. And this is right here is talking about a prophecy that the Lord is going to cause an event to take place, which is going to draw the U.S. Army out of America, away from the Israelites who primarily dwelling here in America, also known as Babylon the Great in the Bible. Now, the recent attack by Hamas on Israel, that may have been the event which starts the deployment of all these armies into the Valley of Jehoshaphat. But we're going to have to wait and see. But we're already seeing the movements that the Bible is speaking about. Okay? Because what's going to happen, as you just heard, that last man, by the way, he's a very good source for like world news. He's really connected into like the military, like retired military, and he gets a lot of good intel. So as you heard him say, that they're currently delaying, or the U.S. is trying to delay Israel from going into Gaza through the land, because they want to strategically place their military assets in the place where they could ward off any attacks or basically intimidate the Arab nations, the Ishmaelites. And that's what you're seeing now, right? We just heard him also say that the carrier that was deployed over there, that they had served steak and lobsters. Now, I had seen this the other day, and I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, well, this is something that they're giving them as a treat. But like he said, this is a naval tradition that they'll do before they give them a big job to do, or there's going to be some bad news given, so that way they don't have such bad morale. Well, you see all the writings on the wall, and World War III is about to kick it into high gear. Because again, believe it or not, we are currently in World War III, but it's right now a Cold War. I mean, it's been going on for a long time, right? So right now it's about to become a kinetic war, where you're going to start seeing nations and armies start to attack each other. For the most part right now, it's just the Hamas, which is basically an Israeli-backed terrorist group, pretending to be for the Palestinian peoples, who attacked and killed Israeli citizens and supposed military assets. And then you've seen Israel attack the Palestinians. But fairly soon, you're going to start seeing other nations get involved, right? Just we've been seeing Russia recently put their backing towards Palestine, and then China came out and said that they're going to back Russia. So you see all these nations are coming together. This is Revelation 16 and 16. And he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. And this is what it's talking about, right? Right here. This is Armageddon, the valley of Megiddo. Let me zoom in. So you see Lebanon up here in Syria, Golan Heights, Jerusalem's here, and Gaza strips right here. Now, I think because how the Bible says that the armies of the world are going to be gathered into the valley of Armageddon, and also the valley of Jehoshaphat, because the valley of Jehoshaphat is right here basically. This is the valley of Jehoshaphat. So for the most part, that can mean all this section right here. And guess what's here? The West Bank. The bigger portion of the Palestinians that are still in the land of Israel today. So what we might see is that the Gaza Strip may just be destroyed, right? Israel has already come out and said that after this military movement that's going on, that the Gaza Strip is going to be far less in size than it used to be. So they're more likely going to take it, half of it, if not all of it. But the point being is that once we're done with Gaza and this whole psyop that's going on right now, they're going to more likely move on to the West Bank. Because why? Well, because you see Amalek being the biblical name for the so-called Jews or the Israelis, because again, Amalek would be the top tribe of the nation of Edom. You see Amalek being close to achieving his goal of world domination. He wants to ultimately get rid of all these other heathens out of the land of Israel, and he wants it all for himself. So after Gaza, he's definitely going to go into the West Bank. And this is more likely is going to be due to the fact that the atrocities that are going to come from the Gaza Strip takeover or siege are going to rouse up the Ishmaelites to the point where they're going to have to do something. right? And also we've just heard, like I said, Russia, Palestine, I think Belarus also just announced that they want to provide assistance. Was it Belarus? Yeah, I think it was Belarus. But the thing is that these devils, they're going for it, and this is going to lead to the end of these devils' world, right? The end of the world, or Armageddon. Now, one thing I want to be clear about is that the world is not going to blow up. It's not going to end. But what will end is the current status quo upon the face of the earth. That being the rulership of the Edomite Empire, Edomite being the biblical name for the Caucasian race, over the entire world will come to an end. Because there are two major prophecies that are going to take place. One is World War III. And the second is the mark of the beast, which is the RFID implantable microchip that's going to go in your hand or your forehead, or in your head. That is going to have to be made mandatory, right? And we are on the brink of having the digital currency being initiated here in the United States. There's already digital currencies, and the digital currency systems are already being used around the world, but they haven't done it here yet in the United States. This is what more likely is going to come during the end of this year or the beginning of next year. And once they do that, then you could bet that they're going to shortly after that announce a convenient and cool implantable microchip where you could do everything you've done with your phone, but without even having to carry it around. And what's going to happen is they're going to make people, volunteer for it. And once the population is more likely about 60% adopting of it, then they're going to make it mandatory, and that's when things are going to go down. When they make the mark of the beast mandatory, the World War III, which is going to be already taking place, is going to kick into high gear, and you're going to see a lot of crazy things happen, right? And like it says, the Lord is going to gather together all the nations into the valley of Armageddon. Okay? This is Joel 3:2. I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered amongst the nations and parted my land. And who has done that? Who has parted the land of Israel today? Well, that would be Esau, right? These Caucasian race that rules the world, right? They first conquered it from the Ottoman Empire, the Ishmaelites, in the early 1900s after World War I, when they got it from when basically Turkey fell to the Allied powers. Turkey being on the side of the Axis powers, the supposed bad guys, right? And then basically through Esau's trickery and maneuvering through bureaucracy and red tape, he ultimately got Amalek in that land. And then it wasn't until after World War II that they made it official, right? Not official, but they kicked it into high gear and started moving en masse into that land. So this is Daniel's 12:10. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. So you see, all these events are taking place, and to the average citizen of the world, they have no idea what's going on. They just think it's some other world conflict, some war that doesn't really affect them. And they see all these other things going on in the news, right? From people standing up and protesting, speaking against their leaders, right? You have a coming food shortage. You have prices of fuel going up. You have all this corruption being exposed. And again, all this war and rhetoric being spouted. But again, the wicked, they're going to continue to just live their life and do what they want to do because they see these signs and they don't understand them, right? What did Matthew 13 and 11 say? For it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but unto them it is not given. And that's ultimately what's happening, right? The 2/3 of our people, the Negro, Latino, Native Americans, right? The 2 out of every 3 Negro, Latino, Native Americans that will not wake up and will be put to death in these ending world events, right? Or they will wake up, but ultimately they're going to go back and they're not going to be clean enough to make it into the kingdom. They're going to ultimately perish on this side because they didn't, take heed to what the Lord said. This is Romans 13 and 11. And that, knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. And ultimately, that's what we got to do, Akim. If you stumbled upon these videos and you've been just haphazardly learning, hey, you yourself got to kick it into high gear. You got to understand these scriptures. You got to understand where you come from as far as what your true heritage is of being an Israelite. You got to get the names down of the Most High Father Yahawah and his son Yahawashi. You got to just get these laws into you as best as you can. Perform them to the best of your ability, right? Because that right there is the key to show that you're really down for this truth, that you really love the Lord, is that though you don't have to keep the laws, that you will. Okay, that's the key, Akim, right? That's the reason we've been given grace, because again, we can't keep these laws perfectly, but we sure can try. And that's what shows the Lord that we really love him and we honor him by doing the work, okay? By keeping the laws as best of our ability and just constantly trying and continuing and not giving up. So hopefully this video was edifying. I wanted to give everybody kind of an update of what's happening, kind of gather all the news from all these different channels to give you, Akim, an updated view of what's going on in the world. So hopefully this video was edifying. Until next time, I want to give all honor and glory and praises to Yahawah, Ba'Shem Yahawashi, Ba'Shem Qadash. Shalom.